Well, welcome to A Cup of Life, and we're back here in Kihei, Maui with our friend Craig Englert. We're drinking some Tamor Rio Cocoa Bean Coffee, the friendship drink.
Friendship drink. Doesn't get better than this.
So, in our last episode with Craig, he told us about the big Florida surfer that came to the North Shore of Oahu and finally saw big waves, and the surprising transformation that happened in his life when he had an encounter with a lieutenant from the Air Force at his college. Now, after that event, Craig got involved in a church on Oahu, a Kaimuki church.
Yeah, Kaimuki Christian Church. Yeah.
And I met the pastor years ago, Harold Gallagher, and at the time, Craig also met a guy named Hal Jones, who was married to Vanna, who was the nanny of Bill and, or not Vanna, Lana. Vonette Bright, the founders of Campus Crusade. So Craig and Hal ended up starting Campus Crusade in Hawaii. And then Craig went to California and got involved in a Bible school there called the Jesus Christ Light and Power House.
Correct, yeah.
And it was during that time he found a church called Hope Chapel, right?
Well, Hope Chapel, Kihei.
No, on Hermosa Beach.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you met Ralph Moore, who was the pastor of that church,
Yes.
and Ralph sent you here to Maui. Okay, so I want to ask you, why come to Maui though? Why couldn't you just stay in Los Angeles and do church work in California?
Yeah, we did have a great work that was going on there, which was really good with Hermosa Beach, Hope Chapel, and God used Kathy and I just to be able to come alongside Ralph, and we helped start the small group ministry and the Bible school that they had there. And
did you meet Jason Spence then, or that was before you met him?
Oh yeah, I met Jason back here in Hawaii.
Okay. But you met his future wife, Tony?
Tony, yes.
She was part of that?
Yeah, she's probably, if not, I think she's the first convert that they had with Ralph Moore's church.
Right,
Yeah.
she was. She said she was the first first person that actually got saved through his ministry. Okay?
Yeah.
And but why Hawaii?
Well, the main thing is that this is where I became a Christian, as I shared in the previous session we had. And being, I love Hawaii. I love the weather. I love everything about Hawaii, especially surf and being able to have warm weather all year round, visit the cold, mountains on vacations type of thing. But my heart really was given towards reaching the islands because back in 1968, when I became a Christian, there were just very few churches. It was a small percentage of people going to church in the islands, especially outer islands. But we were in Honolulu, and that's where I really felt a passion to start a church from scratch, and it would be in Honolulu, and so that's the passion that God gave me to reach the islands. It was there, and plus I love the islands, just physically speaking, and all that it offers.
But how did it get the target get to be Maui instead of Oahu?
Well, the vision was because we had I did a lot of ministry in Honolulu, and that's with high schools and with colleges. Well, that's where the college is, University of Hawaii, and of course it's a population is so much larger than the Big Islands, and so when I always looked at terms of discipleship and winning the islands to Christ. You always go to the big cities like Paul did.
Right,
He would go to Ephesus and go to Rome, and and Corinth, and these are major cities, populations, and so that's always in my mind. And so this is the ideal spot for me to start a church somewhere in Oahu. But what happened was when I went to visit some friends that we knew from Los Angeles when we were doing ministry there. We had a couple study, and that was John and Finney Patterson. They moved to Maui, and I discouraged them from moving to Maui. They were planning to go to Oahu, and there they had a lot more churches there that they could, and they were new Christians. They could get discipled in. But when they said, "Oh yeah, we're going to move to Maui," I said, I remember warning them. I said, "No, I strongly urge you to go to Oahu. You're just going to die in the vine there, basically." And they disobeyed me.
Good
and
for
so
them.
they moved.
Good for them.
They moved to Maui. And so a couple times from the years afterwards, the immediate years afterwards, I would go back to Hawaii. We did ministry in Kaimiki Christian Church. We did these outreach ministries. And so Kathy and I would go visit John and Finney in Maui for the weekend and leave. We did that a couple times. Well, this time they moved from the North Shore to Kihei, Maui, Hawaii. And so I visited them there in their condo. And at this time, they only had 6,000 people living in Kihei. Real small town, but it's a growing town, definitely. It's definitely growing. And it's right on the beaches, and the potential resort community can get built up. And so it was a real nice place, for people and the population to grow. There's no doubt about that.
Right.
And but I wasn't thinking about that at all at the time. I just was there for the weekend, and so one day I left early in the morning, and as of habit, I would go on a walk along the beach and have a quiet time with the Lord. And so as I went back and forth, and just almost getting back to the condo, I was walking along a pathway from the beach to the street. And as I was walking there, I heard a voice that it was God speaking to me, and it was very clear voice. And this is what I heard from God specifically. Here is where I want you to start the church. And that was clear as a bell. And it just stopped me in the tracks right there. And I go, what?
Was that off Halama Street?
Right off of Halama Street.
Right. Yeah,
right there.
I think
Their
you
condo. Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
I think we walked along that path coming from the shoreline.
Yeah, I was within 50 yards of their condo.
Uh-huh.
But there's a beach pathway, public pathway for the beach to the street. But it's right there, and I go by there often, and that's a place where God really spoke to me. And I was kind of amazed when I heard that. I go, man, Maui, I'm just thinking about that, but it was so clear. And so when I told John and Finney, when I immediately got back 5 minutes later, they thought I was just joking with them, playing with them. Oh yeah, because they always were telling me, this is where you should start the church, is in Maui. So I come back, God spoke to me. Oh, you're just joking. No, I heard a clear voice, God speaking to me. Here's where I want you to start the church. And so that's where it all got started. And I was greatly surprised. And then I started looking at the dynamics of the community and so forth, so far from what I had in mind in terms of reaching the world for Christ in Honolulu,
Right.
And so...
so it was something you never really thought about.
Not even close.
Had you ever been involved in planting a church before?
No.
No. Okay. So doing something that you hadn't done in a place that you didn't really want to be.
In terms of starting a church.
Yeah, right.
God bless Maui. I mean, Maui's a pretty nice place. In fact, it is a place that, I would prefer to be in a place like Maui than Honolulu. But of course, with Honolulu, you got all the crowds, traffic, stuff like that, which is, but that's the appeal to me is where the population is.
The people, right.
Yeah.
That's where the people are.
Right.
So what year was that you heard that voice? What month?
Yeah, that was in 1980.
80? Spring?
It was actually it was like the first week of January 1980.
And so you went back to California.
Yeah, I went back to California, and I'm going to have to talk to Kathy about this because Kathy and I, for over 6 years now, our desire was to go to Los Angeles to get better equipped to be able to plant a church. That was our desire, and so now it's time that I really felt this is the time to start the church here in Maui. And so when I shared that with her, she was reluctant because had such a good ministry going off here. We got all our friends, and we got their house. We bought a house, and it's a relatively new house, and we have a child right now, and everything's so nice here. So it took some of the Lord's convincing to walk through all that. And then I told Ralph, I go, oh gosh, I'm going to have to tell Ralph, his star staff member is going to be leaving. And I was thinking of how to put it and kind of share with him. So I broke it to him. I just sat down with Ralph, said, Ralph, I just got back from Maui, Hawaii, and I really told him the story and just wanted to see what his response was. And all of a sudden, he just lit up. He says, oh, that's the greatest thing in the whole world. And all of a sudden, I got real disappointed. I just thought,
what were you hoping he would say no?
how sad he would be to have me leave.
So good you're going, Craig.
There was none of that. There wasn't even the balance of that afterwards. It was just this is great. Go do it. That type of thing. So that was his response because he has such a gift of starting churches, and it was in its infant stage at that time, and I would just be one of maybe 4 or 5 others that were starting from his church.
At that time, there were others that were starting?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 others.
Okay. Well, the Hope Chapel movement, the last time I was at a gathering of Hope Chapel people on Oahu, there was a count of almost 2,000 different churches that have grown out of this movement from Hermosa Beach.
Yes.
Scattered all over Australia, Europe, North America, Japan, and wow, Ralph had a real vision.
Yeah, and he still is doing the same thing.
It.
Still doing the same thing, and encouraging. His podcast is encouraging people to do church plants.
Right.
Period.
Right. So you came to Maui, September of 1980?
Yes, it took a couple months to convince Kathy.
Mm-hmm.
And then, excuse me, we eventually got to Maui 7 months after I heard God speak to me.
Okay.
September.
Wow, that's really cool. Okay. And then?
Excuse me. And then, so we...
Wait, how do you start a church out of just scratch?
Yeah, well...
How do you do that?
First of all, you need people.
Wait. You need people, but don't you need a building? And don't you have to... Don't you have to have a building and chairs and sound system and all that stuff before you can start a church?
Well, you have to have a place to meet.
Okay, a place to meet, okay.
And it doesn't have to be a building.
Ralph, when he went to Kailua, remember where he went?
Yeah, he's on the beach.
On the beach park, right?
Yeah.
What a bold guy, right?
He's a bold guy. He started right on the beach and in a very wet area, too.
Yeah, right.
Windy wet, actually. But yeah, it's, I've learned from being launched out by Ralph. I was not alone. What you would call a migration type of philosophy of church planting. And the churches that he planted were, of course, around the area of L.A. L.A.'s a huge, sprawling area. And so different churches were being planted. And he would encourage people to join in and leave his facility to go and plant a church from scratch with different leaders that God has raised up within his church.
So Ralph's strategy was small group ministry, recognize people that had a calling on their life, spend time with them, and then say, why don't you go to this part of the city and why don't you start something?
Yeah, and some of it's that person's living in that part of the city
Right.
at that time. Now, after it starts expanding, yeah, they would just go out around the world, you know. But yeah, no, that's very key to be able to, in terms of church planting, is to keep in mind, don't try to do it alone. Don't try to do just a mom and pop thing, and you have a couple of children meet in your living room, and you have no contacts or contacts in the vicinity or people to come along with you.
Right. When I met Bill Gross in Cary, North Carolina, Bill was an
That's
electrician.
right, Bill Gross.
He was an electrician, and then he became a worship leader at Hope Chapel. And Bill and Mike Remedios and his wife Alice, and I think 13 families moved from LA to Raleigh, North Carolina, and planted Hope Chapel there.
Yeah.
And it was like, so there was community, they came with community.
Yeah.
And the impact of all of those relationships just brought in so many more people. You know, it was thriving just after a couple of years of Bill and and Mike and their
What
families.
a great example.
Yeah.
That's a classic example.
Yeah. And some of them stayed. Others, I noticed 4 years into it, moved back to California. But they committed that time to come and be part of the church plant, and super successful.
Yeah.
And Bill brought his California church mentality to North Carolina, where everyone dresses up in suits and ties, and Bill never dressed up in a suit and tie. In fact, he wore shorts. And I remember for a couple of years, he never did anything but wear shorts, even on the coldest December and January days. He was bringing a different culture, a very casual but very orthodox culture to that area that really worked.
That's like Rick Warren. He wore aloha shirts all the time, you know,
Right.
in Southern California.
That's right. So yeah, so you came here. You had John and Finney. Who else came with you to?
Well, that's the thing. Is going back to the migration. You know, in Maui, the biggest church at that time was 150. You know, it was the Assembly of God Church, and then there's just sprinkled churches that met at. Some had facilities, but a lot of them were home churches and so forth. So there wasn't a whole lot of going on in Maui, as I was trying to warn John and Finney about. And so what we did is there's people that were really longing for a church in Kihei. There was nothing going on in Kihei except maybe some home churches. There was some things going on in Kahalua, which is the big city of Maui, up country and the west side. A couple of movements, but they're very small, like 100 people type of thing. And but definitely they were really preaching the gospel, and they were more contemporary in their approach to winning people to Christ. And so what we did is through John and Finney. John and Finney knew a bunch of people, so that were looking for a church in Kihei and were hungry for one. And so he had 20 adults that was raised up by John and Finney that would commit to join with us to start the service.
I did not know that part of the story. That's really cool.
Yeah, and we had people from Teen Challenge, you know, that they're half hour away from here in Oluwalu, and there were some people that was looking for a church as well. They were people that John and Finney knew well, and so they had just 20 people there. And so on my part, in terms of doing like John Gross did, is I look for people who would like to come, who would want to come to Maui to help us start and plant a church.
Yeah.
And so I made a video of what Maui looked like, and so I showed all the most beautiful places, and I showed the best waves in the whole world, and people were signing up left and right, stuff like that. And Ralph finally came to me, "Hey, no more showing that video." You know, so, I don't want them to go for that reason, you know.
Right.
And I didn't care. I wanted to go, just come, help us start. But we did get 20 people to join Kathy and I to come, and they all they all did come, and they were all in their 20s, practically every one of them. Most were single. We had one couple, two couples join us, and that was the group. And so we had a pretty vibrant, good start of 50 people the first service.
Really?
Yeah.
And
so the worship is really full,
Uh-huh.
rather than you and Auntie singing
Right.
and your daughter doing a hula, that
Right.
type of thing.
Right. So you met at somebody's house those first few weeks, right?
Yeah.
And then what was the next place?
Yeah, next, well, we were there for about 5 weeks. John Patterson, our friend, they found it was an old Kihei school
Mm-hmm.
that they just recently started and built a new one. And so it was open air type of community center type of look, which it became the community center. And so they opened up the one of the buildings for us to grow the church. Basically, it's no cost to the county or to us.
So that room that when I showed up in September of '81, so this was about a year later, right?
Mm-hmm.
That room probably had 120, 130 people in it.
Was that when you came?
Yeah,
We were still in that room with the
yeah.
with the kitchen in the back.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow,
yeah.
that's.
Yeah, it was, and it was just very vibrant, and people were enjoying being there. The guitar players were good. Okay, yeah, it's okay. So, what was the next step? You found a place. You had 50 people. Now you're in the community. What was the next step for building this church?
Well, the thing before coming, we had to come up with a what are we going to do? And so I met with a guy named Pat Hammond.
Oh yes, Pat. Of course.
And so he came with his wife. He was the other couple that came. And what happened is that we built a philosophy around what Ralph mentored us with, and that we take a look at the last chapter of Acts chapter 2. And it's just a brief summary of what the church in the book of Acts was like. And it just gives a summary of what they were doing as they started the early church, literally.
After the day of Pentecost.
Yeah.
They met together in their homes. They shared meals together. They worshiped together. They listened to the apostles' teaching.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that had a need was
generous.
Generous.
And God added to the church. They were very evangelistic. Those were being saved.
God naturally added to their church. It was a very organic thing.
So we look, for example, those different themes, like they were devoted to God's word. Mm-hmm. That's we got to really teach God's word. They were devoted into worship and prayer. And they were devoted to generosity. They were devoted to community and outreach.
Right.
So we had 5 values that we had, and these are the things that we're going to really shoot for, in terms of, and let people know this is what we intend for every member to be part of. What they are joining is not just going to a church, but going to a movement that is the body of Christ, and it is what God has called us to be and to do as His church. And so we had that started with, and so as we moved to the community center where you started coming, we start seeing God was in the process of building what you would call a strategic core. A strategic core, it gets close to around 300 to 400 people. And strategic core is when you have opportunities for ministries that you have a Sunday school type of thing,
right.
Children's ministry, you have maybe a starting with a youth ministry, and then you have maybe a women's group or a men's group. Those things begin to come out of a strategic core. And of course, the worship team, you get people using their gifts. And anyway, those were strategies that we've had. And the things that we learned from Ralph in particular was that every member a minister.
Every member a minister.
It's called the priesthood of Christ.
Yes, right.
And that was a big deal that we felt that every person that is and what the Bible teaches and what was demonstrated, in the scripture, the early church, in the Bible, in the book of Acts, is that we all are ministers. It's not just me being the pastor and doing the work on Sunday. Everyone goes home and that type of thing. And I'll do a Wednesday Bible study, that type of deal. No, we all have different gifts, and we need to encourage that to happen. And so what the leadership needs to do, and we were beginning to develop leadership, is to, according to Ephesians 4, our job is to equip the saints to do the work of ministry.
Right.
And so
Right.
I started a discipleship group.
Mm-hmm.
Were you part of that?
I was part of, first of all, the chair folding ministry. I got roped into, hey, Mike, why don't you help us fold these chairs after the service? And that went on for a couple of weeks. And then I was like, hey, can you pass out the bulletins at the door? I said, I can do that. So that was my first pull into the ministry. And then remember Maud Hall?
Oh, yes.
Maud was my friend because she worked in Lahaina, close to the where I worked, and she pulled me in one Sunday and said, "I need help with the first grade." And I said, "I don't want to work with kids." She goes, "You're coming with me." And,
was she a good mentor for you for children's ministry?
well, it's funny, as it went by a couple of weeks, I was helping her with the first grade, and then she said to me one Sunday, "Hey, the third grade teacher's not here, so I'm going to take the third grade. You got these guys." And I had them for the next 6 months.
She learned that strategy from me.
And
it's called the Irish goodbye.
The Irish goodbye. Suddenly,
You're gone. You slowly work your way out of the room.
Well, you know who was in that group, the first graders? Zach Hartman.
Oh my God!
And Zach is still my friend,
Yeah, God, I love that guy. Yeah.
But then I knew Pat Hammond was teaching the Old Testament at the Logo School of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and Jason were teaching the New Testament. And there was a meeting at the Monakai when I was managing that restaurant of all the Logos people, and that really intrigued me. And so when I came back from Vail, finally in the summer of '82, I just signed up to join the Logo School of the Bible. And then you had this discipleship class going on, and that was super intriguing because at this point I'm in. I'm in. Okay.
Yeah.
Now if I'm if I'm in, I'm all in. Okay. So, and then we had that discipleship class, and it was Rob and John Pennington, Rob Winslow, John Pennington, and me. And what an opportunity to meet with you and those two guys, quality guys. They were just quality guys.
Yes.
And about the time that, and then you invited me to come to Diane Daniels' house for the Wednesday night study. And then you discovered that I could play guitar, so you asked me to help you. One night you said, "Look, just bring your guitar and help me. Here's a song. Just help play with me." And then I think it was 2 weeks later you said, "Look, why don't you pick out the songs and I'm going to help you," right? So I've got the songs and you're playing along with me. And then it was the old Irish goodbye. Suddenly you said, "Okay, you're going to do the worship at our Bible study." And you did the same thing with me as far as teaching at that Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
"Mike, why don't you teach this week?" "Okay, Craig, you want me to teach?" "Yeah, I'll just teach this week." And then a couple weeks went by, you asked me to do it again. And then soon you just said to me one day, "Okay, from now on, you're the teacher on Wednesday night because I'm going to go start another group." It's I do it with you, you do it with me, Irish goodbye. you do it.
And I'll pray for you.
And I'll pray for you. That has been a model of my personal discipleship with the people that I'm working with is, I do it with you, you do it with me, you do it. It was a great example. And my life was just transformed by this ministry model, especially the community aspect, because I was eating so many meals with my Hope Chapel friends. and I was going to the beach on Sundays and Saturdays. This became my community.
Mm-hmm.
And that Acts chapter 2 example of the Christian community, Rodney Stark wrote a book a few years ago called The Rise of Christianity. And he's examining how the Christian church grew so rapidly in the Roman Empire. Rodney says at the end of the first century, he estimates there were 10,000 Christians in the Roman Empire. But by the middle of the fourth century, about 300 years later, there were 33 million Christians, which constituted 53% of the Roman Empire population. Rodney said, how did they do it? And as I read through the book, this was probably a year and a half ago that I finished, but I've been going back and rereading. It was the creation of the community. The Christian community stood out among the Roman community because, first of all, they treated women really nice. Husbands didn't have extramarital affairs. They took in orphans, especially the girls that the Romans were throwing away. Because if you had a girl, baby, Romans would either throw it off the Tiber Bridge or take it out in the woods and just leave it. And the Christians would bring those kids in and raise them as their own. Even Marcus Aurelius in 260 writes, these Christians are more noble-minded than us because they take our kids and raise them. When the plagues came in 160 and 250, a third of the population of these Roman cities were dying, but who was taking care of them? Was the Christians. They were the one feeding them and giving them water. And Rodney pretty much documents if you give a sick person food and water, their chances of living just jumped 33%. Because the pagans, if you got the plague, the pagans would just kick you out in the street because they didn't have any theology about caring for the poor or caring for the sick. Roman, Greek gods didn't have that in their thinking of caring for these humans, but the Christians did.
Yeah.
And even though many of them died caring for these plague-ridden people, but it didn't matter because they knew what was coming up was a lot better. So the way they treated women, the way they cared, they started these infirmaries, hospitals. They did their business in a very fair way, and there wasn't corruption going on. And when people came to the urban centers, they naturally gravitated to the Christian segment of society because they were so welcoming, they were so helpful. They gave them hope in an often very chaotic environment. And Rodney's point, I think, of the book was we're really in a place where we're a lot like the Roman Empire now in this 21st century culture.
Yeah.
And that if we just do what that early first century, second, third century church did, just community, helping, loving one another, God is very naturally going to do something.
Yeah.
And that was my experience, Craig, coming here from living in Vail, Colorado, and coming here, I became part of a vibrant community, and people cared for me, and they actually loved me, and that's transformational. I mean, it really is.
Oh, no doubt about that.
Very transformational. Just the care and the love, and just feeling like you were valuable to somebody.
Yeah. So extremely important, such a huge value for the church, that we've had, and we all started out like instead of a Sunday night service with teaching and maybe some worship, as many churches in those days would do. We would just go to the beach and have a beach fellowship.
At Cam 3.
Well, there in Cam 1, when we first started, was in Cam 1, right there at the north end, or south end, rather. But we just made it a point to get people just to come together and do the potlucks, and we played volleyball and so forth, and the beach volleyball. But that was strictly geared for building community, and not doing another lesson, of teaching. But we would try to do small groups midweek, and then we would do, of course, teaching on Sunday. But Sunday morning. But the value was how you go in house to house concept, is being able to have what you're talking about, that community of,
Yeah.
of love being expressed. And then, given what Ralph said and mentored for us, was the idea to really encourage people to find their ministry where they fit in the church, and to be able to see themselves as somebody who's taking part of the mission that we have to make disciples and reach people for Christ who have never heard of Christ.
Right.
And so that thing really stood firm as our philosophy, going back to Acts chapter 2, with prayer and worship and outreach. Those are the things that we use as a foundation to build the church.
Right. And well, how fortunate I was to sort of stumble into that.
Oh, and the heart of it.
Yeah, because
things were growing fast at that time.
Yeah, and I was just given so much nudging and pushing, and to where it was just a very natural thing, and I felt I was so well equipped, even though I ended up going to Honduras and doing something I'd never done before, like you. I being involved starting a school project, and things that I never thought about doing, didn't want to do, but God had for me. And I think that's what's happening in the churches, at least that we're part of today, is it's not a spectator sport anymore. Christianity is a participant sport. It's people exercising those spiritual gifts that Paul writes about in 1 Corinthians 12 and Romans chapter 12, 1 Corinthians, and those chapters, just how the Holy Spirit empowers us to do things that we really couldn't do on our own, and
Right.
And things that happen that are amazing. And at the end of the day, you go, wow, what an amazing day this was. And, just the opportunity to engage people that they don't know it, but they're all looking for the high of life. They're all looking for the purpose of life. And to do it in such an organic manner that the Bible describes, I'm so fortunate to be a part of that.
Well, you obviously have been a great addition, and all that we're looking for are people who are pursuing the Lord and being obedient to God, the things that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And you had that heart, and that's what we're looking for in terms of leadership and launching different ministries, as well as church planting and missionary work.
So what is the state of Hope Chapel now? 40, are we coming up on 45?
Yeah.
45 years? What's the state of our church here on this island? As far as just impact and numbers? And
you're talking about Hope Chapel here in Kiev? What is the state? Right now, 5 years ago is when I retired from staff, as you well know. And so I was here for 40 years. And one person put it, says, you were really obedient to that one word he gave you, and that was to start the church here in Maui. And I thought about it. Hey, a lot of people who get a word from the Lord, they don't do anything about it.
Right.
Okay. Well, 40 years is a good start right there, So I definitely have been faithful to do that. But it was so good. It goes back to what we're talking about again, to equip the saints, do the work of the ministry, and that's been the focus. And so by the grace of God, what my goal was, and it's just a wish for, in terms of being able to raise up leadership that is for this next generations, and not just hold on to the pulpit, as some people just grasp it and not let go. But when I turned 72, that was my 40th year, and at that time we have the replacement that God raised up. His name was Ben Pragnell.
One of our former interns.
And what was really interesting is that my goal, I was trying to think, what I'm looking for is somebody who's 40 years old. I'm not looking for someone who's 60,
Right.
And is going to retire soon again, that type of thing. But for someone who's young enough to to reach the people that are under 40, the young adults and the early marriage type of, and then also old enough for the older people to be more accepting. So right in the middle, that would be the bullseye for me. Well, when I did uh, retire from staff on our 40th anniversary, Ben Pragnell took over, and when he on that particular day took over, he just turned 40 years old
Really?
that week.
Really? I didn't know that.
That week. It was a week afterwards. I was close enough. Wasn't his birthday. Could have been if I had arranged it right. But that was when we celebrated our anniversary each year. It was in the third week of September. And so I just got through with a staff meeting with the church, and they invited me to come and to be able to meet some people like Mike and Laura Bagby. They do that, and they have other people that come that, in particular, which were the interns this particular last week. And the interns is an intern program that we started 25 years ago, which we have now 11 interns that are full time, and they're there for a total of a year, and they give full time ministry to the church, and that's the vision the Lord gave me to. Because of we talk about strategic core. Well, we have good developed worship ministry, high school ministry, junior high, children's ministry. We have well, anyway, all the different facets of the church. Well, now it's developed to where we shoot for 12 each year. We have 11 this year, but they were there, and so I was able to speak to them and to talk to them as I looked around. We had about 30 of us there, but the average age was around 35, 40 years of age. That was it. Maybe the average age was 35 years of age. Our leadership, talking about staff leadership. And so I spoke to the interns about what we're talking about. Why you're here, we're here to equip you guys to do the work of ministry. And the idea is to multiply ourselves in the world. And these guys are all in their early 20s. When I say early 20s, 20 to 22, pretty much. And then I said, now, how many of you people who are on full-time staff, how many of you were interns before? And so they looked around, and we have about 20 staff there. 10 of them raised their hand, and all of them are directors in each one of these departments, which is really interesting.
Right.
And it's just, it points out again the idea of here's people that come and they're crazy enough to want to join us for a year and do this work in that particular area, this other particular area. Some go back to, most go back to their home, the churches or where they were living. But these, many of them stayed. And they would stay and they would continue being in the church and continuing serving the Lord in some way. And then when it came for an opportunity to raise up a staff member, here are these guys that are young and they are experienced. We know them very well. They've proven themselves well. They've been faithful even years afterwards. And then they were elected. And as a result, we have so much more harmony. We just don't hire people that we don't know and just hopefully they're good, they're talented, and stuff like that from the mainland. It's people that we've seen in community. Yeah. And now that's what we have for the church.
Yeah. I watch it. We got Ben, then we got Kyle. Both were in the same intern class.
Yeah.
And then we got Jordan and his wife Erin. They were they in the same intern class?
Don't think so. I think
maybe he came.
Wait, they were. I saw them surfing together early on in their internship. That's
right. And then Erin came back on staff, and Jordan came, and he just was volunteering, working.
Yeah.
And he's a great teacher. He's a very good teacher.
Yeah, then there's Jenna from the department head. Then we got, of course, David. Now he's never married as well, and now he's like the administrator in our church. and we go around. There's 10 of them that are there, but it's just the idea is what I learned from Ralph was that every member a minister, and just putting that out there. Then you see the people that obviously that end up becoming elders.
Right.
The leadership in the church, and they are people that you've seen that have proven themselves to get into other positions of greater influence, and either at our church or in the community or in different missions.
Yeah, I was at a memorial service last week up in Lahaina side for Roger Bacon, who was a karate instructor and very powerful individual here on the island. He came as a drug dealer. I was sitting next to Dave Allaire, who was the manager of Chemo's when I got to Maui in '81, and sitting behind me was a bartender, Dickie McManus he was a bartender at Chemo's, and he was also selling drugs on the side. And sitting next to him is his wife, Marla. She was one of the waitresses at Chemo's. And I'm looking around this room, and there were probably 150 people there. And I realized all of these guys, when I came to Maui, many of them were not Christians. And they weren't looking to be Christians. And the service is being led by Ricky Ryan, who owned a record store. I don't know how he got saved, but Ricky became the pastor of the church that got planted up in Kapalua. But I realized none of these guys came to Maui looking for Jesus, but Dave became one of the elders.
Yeah.
Dickie and Marla, they became our youth leaders at Hope Chapel, and
you became our missionary.
And I became a missionary. But I was looking around at these different...
I became the senior pastor.
It's crazy. I mean, God loves to use ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And the least likely person that you think would become a Christian, and I have stories, personal stories, are the ones God often uses the most. And it's so different than my perceptions of what Christianity was as I was growing up. So I hope many of you are encouraged hearing this story today of how Hope Chapel started here on Maui, because God asked Craig to do something he'd never done before. He didn't really have the resources to do it. He had enough experience working and ministry to where he knew when the Holy Spirit was moving that those things were going to be provided in even better ways than we could plan. And once you get on the wave of the Holy Spirit, you don't want to kick out. You want to keep riding you want to keep riding that wave.
Hey, that ping pong game.
Yeah, just boom, boom, slam, slam.
That was the other episode, so you might have missed that one.
But I just want to encourage you, those of you who are listening, that Christianity is the greatest adventure that you could ever step into, because God has a very unique adventure for you. And in my dictionary, adventure is defined as a risky undertaking, but a remarkable experience. Yeah. And that's been your story.
Absolutely.
That's been my story. And I want to encourage all of you that God has a very particular adventure for you. And when he starts nudging you and he says things to you like, I want you to start a church here, or when he says to me, a school project right here on the most remote corner of Central America. Really? A coffee store on the island of Utila. Really? How do you do that? I guess you just make coffee and invite people.
Well, you were scooping ice cream for about a year.
That's true. And, so I do have some experience. But just be encouraged. This is a great adventure that God has in store for you. So we're going to sign off with this episode of A Cup of Life, drinking real cocoa bean coffee from the island of Timor. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you on the next one. Aloha.